guys, Roy here from Cruz Photo, and I know it's been so long, and but we're back, and I'm glad to be back. So today we are in Seoul, where the air quality
it's atrocious.
isn't great today, but we're out here just making videos and having fun. And we have a special guest today. This is Dylan Goldby. All right, introduce yourself, man.
Hey guys, I'm Dylan Goldby. I'm a photographer based here in Seoul. You can find me at Dylan Goldby Photographer on Facebook or on Instagram. You could also find me on YouTube. We'll throw a link to that below.
All right. And if you subscribe to mine or Dylan's channels, you might have seen a video that we did together recently for the XH1 review, and that was a lot of fun. So we're going to keep doing these videos together. And speaking of doing videos together, this is actually a companion video to another one that we are filming at this moment, and that is the wide-angle lens shootout.
Right, so basically if you guys skip over to my channel, you're going to find a little bit more technical detail on these lenses. For this video, I think we're going to concentrate more on the aesthetic, why we use wide-angle lenses. Over there, we're going to kind of basically go one by one through these and give you guys an idea of which one renders which way.
Right, and yeah, so in this video, we're going to talk about particular photos that we use wide-angle lenses for and why we did that.
Right.
So first of all, let's talk about some reasons why we choose wide-angle lenses for our photos. What are the reasons that you choose wide-angle lenses?
Yeah, so personally I think the reason that I choose a wide-angle lens is certainly not to give myself that field of view that gets everything in. I'm typically trying to emphasize certain elements within the frame, so I'm going to be getting really close to my subject most of the time and trying to just sort of give them a little separation from that background, but give it a bit of context. That's why I pick a wide-angle lens.
Right. Well, for me, it's a combination of things. I do like the wide field of view with a wide-angle lens, especially for landscapes. I know Dylan is not,
Yeah, I think that's important to note. That I think, you shoot a lot more landscape, kind of cityscape stuff than I do. I typically shoot portraits.
Right.
So we're looking at very different elements.
So I think that'll be a good comparison in how Dylan uses the wide-angle lenses versus how I would use it. But I do like the wide field of view for just sweeping vistas and wide landscapes, and that's that would probably be the first use that comes to mind when it comes to landscapes. But I also do like the wide-angle lenses for street photography, which I'll talk about in a bit as we discuss the photos that we have chosen for this video.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe one other thing that is really useful wide-angle lenses typically they do what's called perspective distortion. So things that are, as I mentioned with shooting a portrait, where you'll get a lot more of the background, but you'll also get your subject looking quite large, is that you're able to, anything closer to the camera is going to be disproportionately larger than anything further away from the camera. So your ability to, say, have leading lines that move into a frame, or taking a particular rock in a landscape and making that the subject and leaving everything else to be the background is really powerful with wide-angle lenses.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And with wide-angle lenses, everything just kind of gets pushed away, right?
It really does, yeah.
Pushed away, but
You've
at the
got to
same
get close.
Yeah, but at the same time, whatever's in front of you gets really close.
Yeah.
It can get really distorted. So you can use that to your advantage as a photographer. So we're going to be seeing some of that as we discuss the photos. So I'm going to let Dylan go ahead and start with the first photo.
All right.
Today.
So why don't we start with the lens that made that photo. So this is one of my favorites from the Fuji X system. It's the 16mm 1.4, and I love this because it's that perfect balance of wide angle, distortion, and shallow depth of field. So you're not getting that extreme distortion, but you get enough where it's, wow, he's using a wide angle lens, but it's not sort of, turning things into bananas or anything like that on the side. It's a really good lens for that, and the 1.4 allows you to really separate your subjects. So in terms of the image that we're about to show on the screen, I really wanted, this is a train repairman for the circular railway in Yangon City in Myanmar, and I really wanted to be able to get close to him, make him larger than life, make him more important than the train behind him, really give him presence in the frame, but still be able to separate him from that background. And you know, if I'd shot this at say f8 or f11, he'd have been as sharp as the background, and you would have sort of almost had this competing for what is the subject of this image. But by shooting it at f1.4, I'm able to separate him off that background while still using that leading line that you're going to get from using a wide-angle lens. So I feel like this is definitely the best choice. I can also show you guys a shot that I did of the same scene at 90mm to give you an example of just how different that is.
It's an interesting combination, isn't it? Like,
it really is, yeah.
You get that wideness, but at the same time, the separation with the shallow depth of field.
It's almost a surreal feel because there's not a lot of lenses that do it, to be honest. There's a lot of wide-angle lenses out there that are, you know, 2.8, f4, something like that. Not very many of them are at f1.4. So it's an interesting feeling, and I really love this lens.
Cool. So up next we have the Samyang 12mm f2.0, and if you follow my work, you'll know that it's one of my favorite lenses ever, because I do like to shoot landscapes, and this just works with the way I see things, and I have mentioned several times that this lens has single-handedly put more photos into my portfolio than any other lens, so I really do love this lens. And the photos that I'm going to show you today and talk about today were taken with this lens. I mentioned before that I really do like this Samyang for street photography, and it gives me kind of an interesting combination of street photography and landscape photography. Okay, because you get this wide sort of vista, but at the same time, you know, I like to use it for specific movements.
No, back in the day when I actually owned the 12mm from Zeiss,
yeah,
I used to use it for exactly the same thing.
Yes.
I think that what they, you know, typically on full frame would call an 18mm field of view,
yes,
is typically it's quite good for getting one subject within a space. I think it's
right.
really good. Yeah.
And with the 12, let's cut into the photo that I took in Hong Kong.
Oh, I know the shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite street shots ever, and you wouldn't typically think of a 12mm or an 18mm equivalent point of view to do street photography.
You have to get pretty close. Yeah.
But it works. And in this particular shot, you get all these great elements. You get the Hong Kong skyline, and it you know, you get that landscape sort of aspect of it. But at the same time, this person in the foreground just stretching. The distortion from the lens, that exaggerated.
The perspective distortion.
It just makes the stretch. This person stretching. It just exaggerates that movement so much, and it's just for me, it's just a great combination. You also get the lines, the leading lines, and it's an interesting.
That's a really good use of that lens. Actually,
really cool way to use the distortion and the wide field of view of this lens. So I think you know, this lens is actually a really good street photography lens. And another shot that I'd like to show is one I took in Goje, which is literally a combination of a landscape and a street photo with a man in the mirror. Cut the song. A man in the mirror, just observing the sunset. So you get both the landscape view as well as the person. He was standing right next to me. So you can the things you can do with this lens are just amazing to me. It's a great combination of two things that I love, which is landscape photography and street photography.
I think this is what makes wide-angle lenses so difficult to use, is that everything is in the frame and you've really got to concentrate on how you arrange those elements. And I think that's a really good example of being able to take something that's actually very close to you, make it the subject, but give it context, you know? That's a very, very good use of wide-angle lenses. That's a great shot, man.
Thanks, man.
So the next photo that we're going to talk about was taken with this lens, which is the XF 10-24 OIS. This, for the longest time, was my favorite wide angle until I invested in the 16mm fast aperture lens. But this one kind of it took a lot of my wide angle shots up until that point, and I really love it for its ability to separate foreground and background. Now, that's probably one of the other things that I really love about wide angle lenses, is that, as I said in the beginning, things that are close get disproportionately large, things that are far away get disproportionately small. And so with this shot of the dancers in Myanmar, what you're seeing is two ladies coming up around like this who are, within centimeters. I mean, I can reach out and touch them, basically. Not that I did. We can reach out and touch them, but they're in the frame, and because of how close they are, they look extremely large. And you can see their hands connecting over the top, holding the ribbons. And then the next set of ladies, who are maybe 2 meters from us, are then significantly smaller in the frame and less important as such. You kind of have this frame that comes around with the two ladies that are maybe more important, and then you have two more dancing in the middle, and as you get to the background, you'll actually see the crowd. Now, everybody here is kind of the same height when you're actually there, but what I'm able to do is, with a wide-angle lens, interpret that scene, make those people significantly larger in the foreground, let them fade to the next group, and then the next group. And the other thing that this does, of course, is when you're shooting through atmospheric effects like dust, which in this case we were dancing in a dusty field in Myanmar in the middle of summer, so it was pretty dry. What that allows the light to do, which is coming from the back, is basically obscure things. So you'll notice that the people at the back have basically no detail. And then you come into the next people, you can see a little bit more. And then the ladies closer to me, there's a lot of detail in them. So contrast is reduced by the light that I'm able to create levels within the frame as well. So this excellent lens, if you're looking for something that's really versatile to create all sorts of different frames, this is the one to go for. That frame was shot at 10 millimeters, by the way. So the one thing maybe to note about this lens is that it is an f4 minimum. So you're not going to get a lot of the shallow depth of field, your bokeh, all of that sort of stuff that you might get out of some of the other lenses. So if you're looking for that, I'd probably go for, say, the 16, maybe the 12 f2, or the 23 1.4. This lens really isn't going to give you that, but it's still great for getting that whole scene in your photo.
So let's move on to the next lens. This is my workhorse lens, especially for paid assignments. This is the 16 to 55 f2.8. But I also love this for travel work. I do a lot of editorial work for magazines, and this lens always goes with me when I do that. So just the versatility of it, the ability to zoom from 16 to 55, it just gives you a whole bunch of really useful focal length. And I just wanted to talk really quickly about an image that, one of my favorite images from last year, which was taken at Nejangsan in the autumn.
Ooh, I remember this guy. This is a beautiful image. I didn't realize it was that.
Yes, it's this one. So the 16 is it's about a 24 millimeter equivalent on full frame, and it's just wide enough so you don't get that crazy distortion from like say the 12 or anything wider. But it's just wide enough to include a fair amount of the scene, and it's good for landscapes. So this particular image, nothing really technically special about it in terms of the lens usage. It's just the field of view worked really well with it. But the thing I wanted to discuss was this particular shot, which is great. I love it. Was followed a few seconds later by this one. So just the versatility of the 16 to 55 allows you to come from really wide into kind of a tighter composition, which helps you when things are happening really quickly in front of you, and it's just you don't have to change lenses and you're ready for the next moment. So it speaks a lot to the versatility of the 16 to 55. It's not the fastest lens. You do get some shallow depth of field at f2.8, but not as much as the other lenses. But overall, I think if you're going to carry one lens with you on a trip, this would be a really solid choice. So this still is probably one of my favorite travel lenses ever.
Thoughts on that? I'm not a zoom shooter, so for me, I mean, my thoughts are not going to be on to versatility of it. The reason that I don't use this lens, A, because it's big and heavy, but in the end I carry 3 primes, so I'm probably negating that anyway. The main reason I don't carry it is because I like to shoot things like f1.4 and f2. I like that shallow depth of field. I like to be able to shoot at night without taking a tripod. I like to be able to, in dim light, when the sun goes down and you're kind of in between buildings and things, I like to be able to shoot without a tripod. And so having f1.4 is really useful for that. I can still shoot even close to sunset at ISO 400, which for me is, that outweighs the benefits of having that versatility. I'd much rather have a second body with a lens on it than I would to have a slow lens. So that's, that's it.
No, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I do love fast primes. I'm loving them more and more. I have the 23 1.4, which I've been using for portrait sessions.
It's a gorgeous lens.
Gorgeous lens, and I'm slowly making my way to purchasing the other fast primes in the Fuji lineup, and I'm loving the bokeh. But there are definitely different applications.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think it's all a personal choice, because as Roy said, this is his favorite one lens for travel. If I were to take one lens for travel, I would take the 35mm 1.4. Because that's the way I shoot.
Yes.
That's the way I see, that's the things that I try to record. So for me, that would be my one travel lens. And
Definitely.
I could still put a 23 f2 or an f1.4 in and still be below the size and weight of that.
Yes.
So I'd have two very good options at that point. So it's all in how you shoot. Yeah.
It's all in how you see, how you shoot. So there is no one lens solution for everything.
Absolutely not.
And I mean, there's a different tool for a different job. Every job has its own specific tools. So
Yeah, and I mean, it has a specific tool for the way you see. So it's definitely up to you as well.
great.
Okay, so I think the final lens we might want to talk about in terms of wide angle would be the Laowa 9mm f2.8. It may not seem like 9mm to 10mm is that much of a difference, but I think in our experience it does give you a significant increase in field of view. In terms of the way it actually creates perspective distortion, I think that it's quite similar to the 10 to 24 at 10mm. We've had a good time with this lens. Maybe the things to consider about this is just how small, light. I mean, it's tiny, right? So you can throw this in the bag and not have to care about it, whereas with something like the 10 to 24, you're going to need a space in your bag specifically for this, right? And again, the Samyang is pretty small as well. It's a little wider, and if you really need that extra width, and you also need to make sure that lines are going to be absolutely straight, so for architecture or something like that, this guy is the way to go. So this image that I shot here, which is of the Dongdaemun Gate in Seoul, this is actually shot from a rooftop quite close by, and the difference I think between the 10mm and the 9mm is that with this little guy I'm able to get not only the ramparts, the ring around the gate itself, but also the tops of the buildings that are nearby as well, which just gets cut off at 10mm, so you kind of have to pick one or the other. Whereas with this guy I'm able to get the whole lot in, along with the Seoul City Wall going around the side as well. So this one might be your choice if you are in, say, tight quarters for a landscape, which in that sense is quite tight quarters because you want to get a lot of this scene in. This might be the way to go. Final thing to consider is that you're going to have to manual focus with this guy, whereas with this guy you have autofocus. You also have image stabilization built in, so if you're not using an XH1, this might be useful for you if you plan to handheld.
Yeah, so that was a really good discussion about the different lenses and some of our favorite photos that we've taken with them. More importantly, how we use them, how we use the strengths of each lens to tell the story. Because in the end, the story
is what matters. Yeah.
is what matters.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what lens you have. It's just how you tell the story. So I think with that, we can end this video. Please do check out the companion video to this, which is on Dylan's channel.
It's a little more technical than this one. It runs through, vignettes and sharpness and things like that, whereas this one we tried to concentrate a little bit more on the photos themselves. Yeah.
Right, so check out both videos, like and subscribe and all that. Before we go, tell us where we can find you online.
Yeah, so you can find me at dylangoldby.com. You can find me at Dylan Goldby Photographer on Instagram or Facebook. You can also find my other writings and musings on fstoppers.com and also creativelive.com.
All right, and you can find me at roycruz.com, and all of that stuff is there. So thanks again, buddy.
Thank you. Been good.
Yeah, and thank you for watching, and take care.